What is up, bros? Josh here, and today's video is all about the Tier 5 IJN Cruiser, the Yahagi. Now, just keep in mind, this ship is still currently work in progress, so stats are subject to change, and we'll talk about what changes I think should happen to this ship going forward when we show some gameplay. Let's go over the ship's stats really quick, and then we'll dive into the gameplay itself. For the ship itself at Tier 5, Tier 5 is a good tier to finally get some new blood in. There's a lot of tried and true ships that we've seen there a long time, especially for the cruisers. Tier 5 tends to also be a pretty hostile tier when it comes to cruisers, since the Tier 5 matchmaking is pretty unfavorable, honest, in my opinion. Lots of battleships that tend to one-shot cruisers, and lots of DDs that tend to be extremely strong. So the waters are hostile at Tier 5, so let's see if the Yahagi can kind of find its role of being a kind of light cruiser for IJN. And it's cool to see the light cruisers. The USN line had its split of the light cruisers and heavy cruisers. Will we see a future of light cruisers and heavy cruisers for IJN cruisers? We'll kind of see, because if you compare it to the Tier 5, which we'll compare it to the most, the Furitaka, that's shooting 203s, and this is shooting 152. So it's really kind of the first one that we've seen above some of the low tier ships outside, like the Kuma, that has a smaller caliber shell. Everything Tier 6 and up tends to have, I guess, besides the Mogami, even though it has the option for the bigger and smaller shells. Really, the IJN cruisers tend to stick with the 203s. 25,700 life on the health pool. That's all right for tier 5. You look at kind of the Königsberg at 24.3. But one thing is, this ship doesn't really have that much armor, so regardless, you just need to be careful. The Furitaka, with its latest buffs, it tends to be a bit more tanky, but you're trading off hopefully more DPM for being, I guess, more of a fragile cruiser. Main battery, which is the kind of the interesting part, 3 sets of 2 at 10 seconds. Now, when I saw a 10-second reload, I kind of thought that seems like a little long for 6 shells of 152 millimeters. Again, if you're looking at the Königsberg, which is sending out 3 sets of 3 every 7.5 seconds. So you kind of look at the Yahagi and you wonder, what's the point of this ship? You shoot slower, you can't really out DPM. There's got to be something that kind of sets it apart, right? Torpedoes, 2 sets of 4. So what we're kind of seeing, and these are, I believe, 1 on each side. No, they're swings, so 2 on both sides. So that is kind of nice at the 10 kilometers. Main battery firing range, almost 15 kilometers. 10 kilometers, these are very standard IJN torps with a 2-minute reload. AA is decent for Tier 5, actually, but nothing really to write home about, but you can obviously set yourself up to shoot down a couple planes. Maneuverability, 35 knots, pretty decent. And a detectability of 9.7. That's actually quite low for a lot of cruisers at Tier 5. Again, comparing it to the Furitaka, which obviously a more armored ship is going to, hopefully, if it follows the model of light cruiser and heavy cruiser, 10.4 kilometers. So you will have that surprise. Again, for a captain, very basic. We are actually running my kind of try-hard Zao loadout. That's what I'm running on the Azuma right now. Azuma as well. Which is another work in progress ship, is concealment and radio location with pretty standard other stuff. Lots of consumables to work as well. And for modules, quickly, obviously premium, you can't get spotter plane, which is kind of a bummer almost, but I guess fighter plane is kind of nice for this tier. And moving forward, only sonar, so no AA, so you can't buff up that with an AA consumable. And then very standard, obviously this is a work in progress ship, so CVs tend to focus on you, and obviously you're still getting lots of planes and CVs at Tier 4 and 5, especially 6. Lots of CVs out in general right now. So bumping out that range a little bit more is always nice. Let's dive into some gameplay and show how the Yahagi plays, and let's talk about some changes that we might want to see with a light cruiser on the IJN line. There you are in game with the Yahagi, and as you see, it kind of looks like a Furitaka, and it's kind of going to play a little bit like the Furitaka until you kind of see what the guns have and what the guns do. I did kind of find it funny that it looks like random pieces of wood were on top of the ship. So again, props to the wargaming. There's probably some kind of connection there, but the detail to the ships are always pretty damn awesome when it comes to this. But looking at the ship compared to the Furitaka, 203s at a much slower reload. Well, I guess not even really that much slower, 15 compared to the 10s. But you have a lighter caliber shell, not any more of them. You're shooting the same amount, but you're really not going to be able to pump out that much more DPM. It seems like it's almost missing like a little bit of a reload, like maybe 8 seconds would have been a tad better. Again, we use the comparison of the Königsberg at this tier having just more shells going out faster, so you lack that DPM on a ship that's really not, again, you you tend to trade survivability for damage, and you're really not getting any of that. Also, it seems super weird to have that kind of velocity for IJN shells, a line that tend to have a very flat trajectory and being able to just kind of wreck face. To have these that seem almost like USN Light Cruiser style. I mean, yeah, they're trying to maybe do a Light Cruiser. Also right there you could see the torp angles, pretty mediocre on those torp angles, the window being extremely small. But you'll see when we push forward too of situations like, man, I wish I was way rather in the Furitaka than this ship, because you expect to hit ships a tad harder and really didn't have much luck for that. We did take a Citadel there, obviously showing a bit more broadside than we want to. But with this, I kind of just felt a tad underwhelmed, because think of how much damage I could have done with the 203s against this Emil. I would have just been Citadel on him. So with the 152s, I wouldn't say you kind of felt helpless. I guess helpless is too strong of a word, but you didn't feel like you had a power, or, you know, if you're lacking that big power hits, you at least want to make up with it with some kind of reload. And 10 seconds to me, with only 6 shells of 152s, seems completely lacking. And again, it just felt so weird to have a trajectory like that for IJN line. It's completely foreign. It was really, really weird. But we will end up getting this kill, but we did not go into this fight having as much I don't know, like, certainty as we kind of normally would. 10k on the board, 1 fire, 15 hits, and we got our first kill. But we have a nice little test subject right here of having the Kuma, which we'll get to test out the AP as well, which again kind of was a tad underwhelming. But 12 kilometers, we have almost a 15-kilometer range with this ship at 14.9, but good. It seems like good luck hitting that. We've seen with the Leon as well, another work in progress ship, of having that really high arc on your shell, and it just seems, I don't know, it's a bit of a bummer. You have this range to play with, but it's not really that useful. What is really your effective range when it comes to this ship? But we do have a nice low detection, which is good for this tier, which is what you want because of how hostile the waters are for cruisers at this tier. But now we have some AP loaded, and you can kind of see what the AP will do against a lightly armored cruiser like the Kuma, which tends to get kind of farmed out. Still don't know to this day how that salvo missed, but again, he's going to kind of hang out, and being a low tier cruiser player, he's going to give us some more broadside, and he'll then turn in. Right there, we got 2 full pens, and as you see, that's the torpedo window. We do have 2 double flex, or 2 torpedo launchers that can launch on either side with a fairly long reload, but that's all right. You don't want too fast. But there we go. We are starting to get some citadels, but again, trying to get those at long range, I just don't see it being too realistic. But there we go. Non-pens on a broadside Kuma. I mean, think of what the 203s could have done to this broadside Kuma. That's what I'm talking about. You do have the sonar, which is nice. We could also pop the plane if we wanted to. But Kuma getting guns getting non-pen against the Kuma, that's almost impressive. And the shells, obviously, we're running a tad higher for the AA range. Could be a bit more accurate. Was kind of surprised. Still playing around with the AP here to see if we could do some weird citadels or something like that. But it just didn't really end up seeming like it was quite worth it. Nice little broadside target here of the Omaha. And checking to see, make sure we're running out of map. And again, just totally underwhelmed. This is a ship I completely felt underwhelmed in. I do like the idea of potentially an IJN line having a different, a light cruiser and a heavy cruiser. We're seeing that push of kind of the differential of slower big hits versus faster small hits. But it seems like this doesn't really get the trade-off of being that light cruiser. We're giving up that armor to have, you know, a bit more damage out, but it didn't feel like we were getting the damage out. Again, hitting broadside ships for no pens at this tier felt super weird to me. Like we should have been doing a bit more damage on that. And I was actually worried about this because I'm like, wait a second, can this Clemson actually out DPM me? You know, obviously he's going to have a much smaller health pool, but I was like, this guy might actually rip me up, especially if you start shooting AP if I show broadside. So I was super worried about this fight, even against a destroyer. You don't want to be in a cruiser and think, man, am I going to get bullied by a DD shooting his guns? And that's how I felt in this ship. Again, though, trying to figure out where everyone's going. Finish off that DD. That's the biggest target. And here you kind of see some wonky dispersion as well. Again, not really used to seeing IJN cruisers not being extremely accurate. They tend to be extremely accurate. There's a good example of the accuracy, but here's a bad example. Oh, never mind. That was a good one. I think the next salvo goes all the way around him. Yeah, there you go, perfect. So you are a low tier cruiser, so you can't expect everything to be lasers, but you expect things to be relatively close, especially for this IJN line, and about having a smaller, what's the right way to say it? A slower reload of 10 seconds. Again, this Koenigsberg just obliterates me, just absolutely obliterates me. And there's not really much I can do with this guy. So here I'm trying to push up, maybe get into a situation where we can push this. This game ended up being a wash. I mean, look at our team obliterate them. They only have 4 ships left. And really, I'll be honest, I've just kind of got this game done and you know, thought it was good enough. I had no real intention of playing this ship because it's just really not that fun. Nothing really stands out as like a ship that's really worth playing. Tier 5, I think Tier 5 is in a position of needing some more ships, especially in the cruiser line. I feel like it's kind of been a neglected tier for a while, and I feel like this is not the ship to bring new life to this line, or to this part of the game. You know, it's just kind of lacking. We do get the torps, so obviously that's feeling more at home with the IJN line. You know, you do have that option of having those torps 10 kilometers, which are fantastic, especially at this tier. And but still, completely underwhelmed. I was hoping for faster firing, which you do kind of get, I guess. I can't give it too much 10 seconds compared to 15. But the DPM makeup is not there. So I'm hoping that seeing the ship go forward, I think it's fine. I think there's room for IJN Light Cruisers. I think that's fun. We've seen a split with the IJN Destroyers, and again, getting non-pens against broadside Omahas. Those are always awesome. And I think we get a trade right here. But still, I think for what we have right here, and we get the kill right there, so that all works out. Underwhelmed. I hoped that whatever we see, and there's the replay. So we'll bounce over to the post-battle screen because we don't want to see that because it's all glitchy. But I don't know. I think it's a good idea going forward about having some extra cruisers, opening up some new ideas. But man, it feels like for what you got compared to what you're giving up, not worth it at all. Not worth it at all. Yahagi, I think, is almost an identity crisis. It wants to be something that it definitely isn't, and that's being kind of a higher DPM light cruiser, and you just don't quite get that DPM that you're giving up a lot of survivability for. We would have been smashing those ships if we were in the Furitaka, just with the slower reload 203s. Imagine hitting those broadsides. It would have been Citadel City. We got 1 Citadel for all that. We did get 3 kills in one in the torpit. So still, kind of a little bit of an IJN there, but still, I think kind of missing the boat a little bit with this, no pun intended. And I think the Yahagi will probably go back to the drawing board a tad. Things I'd like to see: lower trajectory, a bit more of IJN style, and then a bit of a faster reload. I think if we see that, then we'll actually have a pretty fun cruiser. That low detection IJN line, having that dual threat of low detection torps and guns, but the guns have to be a little bit more useful than what that is. Maybe an 8-second reload with a tad lower. I think we're going to be primo, and this might actually end up being a pretty fun cruiser. Right now, though, not liking it. But anyways, guys, that's it for the Tier 5 IJN Cruiser, the Yahagi. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.